Hi there, it's Matthew here from Matthew North Music. Once again, thanks for watching my channel. And as ever, if you like these videos or you're interested in the sort of things I do, be it music, electronics, audio, and stuff like that, please hit the subscribe button because it really does help this channel grow. Now, today, I've had some new windows fitted. These are rather nice UPVC windows, and these have replaced two windows that were here before that were leaking, and I was getting damp in my flat. Now my flat has actually had a lot of damp in different places, and while I've been off this week, I've managed to find the source of a lot of this damp and get things sorted. My spare room does need to have the wall completely chipped back to brick and tanked and re-rendered because it's safety rather than anything else. At least once that's done, nothing's going to ever get through it again. But this spot where I am stood is normally where my rack goes. And in this gap here, I normally had a loudspeaker here and then I had my rack above it. But that's not here at the moment, that's actually in the other room. And while we're in my spare room, you can probably see the kind of state of the walls that are here. And this is just a bit of it. And this section here, this also had damp, but that was mostly caused by the previous window that was here having some loose mortar on the edge. But I did all of this first and it's come out not too bad. I'm just waiting for it to properly dry and then I can sand it and paint it, and that section will be all good. Anyhow, getting back to my original rack. So I just had this speaker on the floor, which is one I made a few years ago just because I happened to have a speaker knocking around, and I used it with the El Pico. But it made a good little stand for this rack here. Now, this rack came out of a fixed installation and it's done very well, but I really need something a little bit bigger because I want to have the rack going to the floor, and then all my audio equipment, not just rack mount, but things like drum machines, other sort of soft synths, you know, things like the Roland boutiques, things like that. I want to have them all in one place and have them all wired in together. Well, now it's about 10:30 in the evening and all the painting on this section has all been done. And yeah, really pleased with it. So I've now got the space here where I think the rack is going to go, although I am toying with the idea of having it this side of the desk as well. Haven't quite decided yet. It probably will go this side though, because that's where it was before. But anyway, bed is calling and we'll start building the rack in the morning. These are our basic materials then. I'm making it mostly out of this pine board, which you can buy in most DIY shops. I like it because it's easy to cut, it looks nice. If you don't need to finish it, you don't have to. In fact, most of the bookshelves and things I've built in my flat, I've made with this, and I've just left it as is, and it looks great. I've got 4 casters that will go on the bottom, and inside here should be our racking. Now, I bought this on eBay, and I think it was about £23, and that included the delivery, although I did have to wait about a week for it. I think they may have forgotten my order. But that's our racking. It's standard 19-inch rack, and it's 18U high, which is I think about 35 inches, or sorry, 31.5 inches I think it is. Now this is almost the same length as the wood, and what I'm actually going to do with this, I'm going to leave a little gap at the bottom just in case there's anything that I put in the bottom that might just hang over, although it shouldn't do. But the idea is I want to leave a gap at the top so that any cables that I have coming through the back of the rack going into my audio interface, which will be at the top, can just come through the back of the rack, go over the top and go straight into the audio interface. So it will be roughly about that position, so I do not need to cut this wood at all. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unwrap the wood and I'm going to screw the racking to the wood. Okay, well we've done our 2 panels now. We've put the racking on, and I've actually put the screws into, wasp there, I put all the screws into the holes and I filled everyone in, and the reason I've done that is simply because it helps spread the weight of the load. So, and you know, these screws are cheap, you know, they came from a multi-pack I bought, so I thought I'd pop them all in. And here we've got this gap here, and that's big enough that I can put an XLR connector through that gap to go into my audio interface at the top. So the next thing we need to do is we need to put the top and bottom on the rack. Now, as a simple way of measuring how I want to get the base and the top, I've just put a piece of equipment in. It's just an old blank panel that's got some transformers and mic sockets on it. And if we look closer, you can see there's just a little gap down here, which is typical with kind of the sort of gap you would expect on a rack. And I've got this on either side. And therefore I can measure between here and the other side, and then that will give me the size I need to cut the wood to make the base and the top. I've come indoors now because it looks like it might rain any minute, but I've cut the piece for the bottom, and as you can see it fits pretty much spot on as it should do. The one issue you do sometimes get with this wood is sometimes it's never perfectly flat, so you might have to account for the odd little bend here and there, but otherwise it's pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drill some holes, and some larger holes, and then little pilots into the main bit of wood, and then I'm going to glue it and screw the bottom on, and then I will do the same for the top. Now, I'd run out of wood screws, and I didn't actually have any 2-inch screws like this, but fortunately I have a very good little DIY shop around the corner from where I live, and it's a proper, you know, open all hours, 4 candles, however you like to call it, proper old school DIY shop. And I can literally just walk there and pick them up. So now we can get on with this. I've flipped it up so it's now upright, and I've put the panel again in here just because that will then give me the correct spacing so that I don't make the top either too small or too big. And how I showed it outside, I've got the same little amount of gap, which is, you know, basically 1 to 2 millimeters on the side, so that any piece of rack gear that's going to go in here is going to fit. There we go then, our box is almost complete. It's nice and solid, and nothing's going to move now, and it's all parallel all the way down because I use this panel as a guide, if you like. All I need to do now is to whip it upside down and put the casters on. For a home studio, you haven't got to put casters on. You could just leave it as it is, as long as it's on a flat surface, or you could just put some feet on it or something like that. But I kind of think if you've got casters on, it means you can at least pull it in and out, so that if you want to get to the back, or even just want to turn it slightly just to plug in a cable or something, then it makes it much easier to do. Now, where I place them, I tend to place them almost on the edge. In fact, you probably about there where you're going over the 2 bits of wood is probably the best, because that means half the caster is taking the full weight on each side. So, you know, you sort of kind of get them about there, then, you know, it's gonna take the maximum weight. Whereas if you move it, if you have them in the middle, then if you had a lot of really heavy equipment, this piece of wood here may bend, although to be honest it's so solid I think that would be very doubtful. But I'm going to kind of place them sort of towards the end, maybe not right on the very end, but sort of about that sort of spacings, and then it should take plenty of weight, and they're kind of in the way, because also when it flips around the other side you don't really want it coming out. So yeah, probably just so the end of the caster isn't touching either end, and then you're probably going to be about right. There's our casters on, nice and solid. I put that one on the wrong way, but I only noticed the recesses as I did the third one, but it doesn't matter really, no one's going to see it. So let's flip him over and see what he looks like all finished. Yes, I'm really pleased with this. It's nice and solid. It looks good. It's the right height. That's now all ready now for me to start putting all my other bits and bobs in. Now, I've made a fair few things with this pine board stuff. For example, I built this CD rack, which came out really well. In my hallway, I built this massive great bookcase because I just needed somewhere to put everything. And because I don't have a lot of room, it's really good that you can make it go right up to the ceiling. And I also made this bookcase that I also keep records in. Again, this was all standard pine board, all from the same DIY shop. Now, with my audio interface in place, this is probably as deep as it probably will get. And the sockets here just come out about level with the back. So once there's jack plugs and things in, you're not going to be able to push this directly up against the wall. But then I didn't want to. I always wanted to pull it a couple of inches from the wall anyway. So size-wise, it's pretty much perfect. Well then, I've got a few bits in the rack. And as you can see, the reason I wanted it bigger is just so I can access things, particularly things that aren't front facing. Like for example, if I want to just make some adjustments to this drum machine, I can literally just pull it out, do what I need to do and pop it back in. And the same goes for this drum machine here. Now I'm going to need to get a few more shelves here, probably one there, just for these other bits. And I've got another drum machine and a couple of other things. But in essence, everything does kind of fit in pretty well and pretty neatly. And I always feel it looks nice having the racking slightly recessed in. You can buy a lot of racks, particularly flight cases, where the racking comes right out to the front. But I kind of like it where, in most part, the controls are actually kind of behind here, although they kind of stick out on this one. Maybe if I did one again, I'd actually move the racking back maybe another inch, so that if you had this on the floor, then none of the controls would be actually touching the ground. They'd all be recessed in. So maybe that's something to think about if you want to have a go at building one. But no, this is it. It's finished now. I'm really pleased with it. So as ever, thanks for watching this video, and hopefully it might inspire you to have a go at building one yourself.